safely, securely, economically, and in every other way. But I'm happy that we in India have been able to achieve this growth, keeping all these parameters in mind. It's not easy, and the years ahead will be even more challenging and even more exciting. I have no doubt in my mind that India's aviation will continue to grow around the same figure for the next few years at least. I'm talking of the short to medium term, and will stabilize even in the long term with at least 10% plus growth. So to say that India's aviation today, and to see it in context of India's aviation 10 years down the line, there is no doubt in my mind that we will be amongst the fastest growing markets along with China in the world. And that is why there was one, like a little mischievous question posed to me during a panel discussion during the IATA conference in Berlin. And one of the guests from the audience asked me a question, that if there are going to be only 12 airlines in the world in 2050, because there was a talk of there's too much competition, there will be a shakeout in the sector, and they asked a question that in 2050, if there will be only 12 airlines in the world, what is your prediction? I said, well, I don't want to hazard any guess, but I can say with a sense of firmness and I would say a sense of knowledge, that if 12 airlines in the world exist in 2050, 3 will come from India, 3 will come from China, and the rest all of the world can divide amongst themselves. So it is going to happen. The growth I'm talking. I'm not talking about the 12 airlines. That was an observation. And that's the reason why we have to build our institutions right. The Airport Economic Regulatory Authority is a step in that direction. The DGCA to be further strengthened into the model of a civil aviation authority is equally on the agenda. To in future give all these regulatory bodies further teeth, further role and expand their activities is absolutely something which is necessary. Pricing of fares, though it is a deregulated activity in a sense, cannot be overlooked. Dr. Mitra, you talked of low fares. Today I don't think any airline is willing to give you a seat at that price which you mentioned. The capacity mismatch 1 year ago was the reverse. You were talking of a year ago. And today if you talk of the capacity, the mismatch has gone the other way around. And that is also something which I am not trying to say that we wish to come and encroach upon everything that the industry wants to do, but we certainly have a responsibility. There's something called predatory pricing, which we can also certainly look at. I'm not saying that we want airlines not to earn money, but we also have to protect the interest of the consumers as the industry progresses from where it is to the next level. I'm sure that when we talk of all this, we also would like to see the industry grow rapidly and, I would say more importantly, profitably. We have seen bad times in the last few years, primarily on account of course, the high fuel prices, the economic slowdown, but also I would say the fact is that not many people really appreciate is that we still had a young industry. The industry's growth has come only in the last 5 to 7 years. That fact also has to be understood. That there are very few carriers but for Air India and Jet Airways who are all less than almost about 5 years old. And that is why it puts extra pressure. while the newer entrants also have the advantage of not going through the learning curve and having not gone through the pains which the older legacy carriers have gone, and therefore they have the advantage of being leaner, meaner and fitter, and being able to shed a lot of the other overheads which the legacy carriers carry. But on the other side, there is also the issue that overall, with the pie having grown bigger, all the airlines have now the capability in future to pool into each other's resources also, to be able to save on costs and to avoid duplicity or multiplicity of various other facilities which they have had to create in the past. When I say this, when the theme of the conference is India as an emerging hub for aviation, I don't think it should be limited to the role of passenger hub in aviation. I think when you talk of aviation hub, you talk of the entire paradigm of aviation activity, right from airports to maintenance facilities to training facilities for manpower, whether it's pilots, engineers, cargo facilities, and the entire gamut of aviation-related activity. And that is now going to be possible because of the critical mass. It could not have been possible at 15 million passengers annually domestically to be able to handle this kind of a complex activity. It's like a chicken and egg situation. What comes first? Now that we have been able to build the sector to a reasonable scale and the kind of growth which will come in future, all these other activities will now become economically and financially viable. And that is, I think, the foundation for aviation, which is very important for the growth to come in the future. And India will certainly be a hub for all these other activities which I just mentioned. In fact, it has always been one of, I would say, the disadvantages India faced, and this is something which I have always been concerned about, that India's airports have never ever been hubs for our own traffic. In fact, other airports outside of India have been the hubs for India rather than our own airports. But that picture is gradually set to change. I'm not saying totally changing. It's still going to take some time. One T3 or one Hyderabad or one Bangalore does not fundamentally change everything. India needs more airports across the country, more airports within a larger metropolitan area, and that is why we have been able to push the Navi Mumbai airport, and also in the near future we will be trying to push even the Pune airport, because that all forms part of the larger metropolitan region of Mumbai. We have to do this. We have to see more multiple aviation infrastructure being created across the country. And I have always been saying this, and I repeat again, that India has about 100 operational airports today. That number must be at least 400 operational airports in the next 10 to 15 years. It is going to happen, whether we like it or not. Once the growth comes, that kind of pressure for creation of infrastructure will come. And even in these about 100 odd airports, minus the first 20-25 airports of the country, all the other airports are under-serviced. And most of these airports are capable of having intra-city traffic. Today all the traffic moves out of Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, period. These are the places from where the traffic originates or terminates. But there will be a lot more traffic which is now going to be built up over the years. Say I can give you two city pairs, like say you can have traffic between Lucknow and maybe Visakhapatnam. Why not? I mean, these kind of other multiple city pairs will also eventually become large, I would say, carriers of traffic within the country. These are issues which we will have to tackle. We also have to see that overall, the aviation infrastructure, as I said about MROs, Boeing is going to set up an MRO in Nagpur, which will be handed over to Air India. I'm sure other carriers also can look at using that infrastructure. And so could be in the case of various other things, which could be set up by some other carrier or maybe an independent entity, which would be servicing the needs. Today, most of our aircraft of other carriers, minus the national carrier, go out of the country for their C&D checks. Some of the other facilities for general aviation, for helicopters, for overall many things, including cargo. India doesn't act as a hub. It is basically originating and terminating traffic. It really does not handle any hubbing out of India, hub and spoke operation out of India at all. What you mentioned about Nagpur, not only Nagpur, but all other airports, once they grow in size, can actually take advantage of the geography of India, in the good time zones which you mentioned, the east-west corridors. All this will eventually be important for the growth of aviation. So I don't want to go into too much of details. I'm sure people in this room are very, very familiar and knowledgeable about all the aspects of aviation. Certainly, a beginning has been made. We do have a blueprint. We do have a vision for this entire sector. And I'm sure that with the stakeholders involved, whether it's the airlines, the airports, other stakeholders in the ministry, the regulatory authorities, the airport authorities, all are going to be certainly, I would say, very, very proactive. And one of the reasons, I think, why India has been able to generate this growth in a very short period of time. Let's not forget 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, what used to be the situation at our airports. I mean, we could, we forget very soon, but just 2 or 3 years ago, we used to travel through Terminal 1B in Delhi. We used to travel through the old Santa Cruz terminal in Mumbai. And these things have changed dramatically in a very, very short period of time. And so is about the growth of the airlines. We earlier used to find getting a seat to Mumbai or Delhi used to be a luxury because there were far too few flights. And today, the number of flights having increased, and again, we still are finding a shortage, is also a reflection that it's also not only the aviation, it's also the overall economy of India, which is really doing well. At the end of the day, if the economy does well, the economy grows at 8 and 9% and maybe more in future, I'm sure aviation is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this economic growth in the country. And I just want to say in conclusion that if only 10% of India flew once a year by plane, only 10% of India flew once a year by plane, I would say that India's aviation will have to grow 5 to 7 times from what it is today. So that is just, I'm saying, as a tip of the iceberg, what we have seen today. And that is why the challenge is not just about talking about these numbers. The challenge is in managing this growth. The challenge is in seeing how the airports will handle it, how the overall, the air infrastructure will be able to handle it. There are many proactive initiatives which are going on, and I'm sure we will be able to meet these challenges. But for that, we need the global fraternity to be partners in our progress. We want them to come here. We have good policies, we have open policies, we have transparent policies, and I'm sure everybody can grow together in a, I would say, the sunrise sector of India. Thank you very much.
Well, friends, I think it's very important.